want to start streaming the live event. Okay. Are we live? Are we live? It seems to be. I guess it's in delay. Yeah, hello everyone! We are live, awesome. Okay, so, bit different this time. Gosh. See, yeah, that happens. Now I got live and I was so concentrated in getting live and I completely forgot what I wanted to say. Shifty, why don't you make the intro?
Oh, great, no pressure.
You know, I already messed up, so you're good.
Oh, okay. So we want to talk about how consuming media isn't just a passive thing. It's definitely an active thing, even though it can have passive effects on the consumer, and specifically the psychological effects it can have, and not just your thinking, but also consequently your behavior, since your behavior is informed by what you think. And especially with like recent events, I think this is really relevant. But as someone who's very much into rhetoric and human behavior, I find this particular topic very interesting. Especially like I'm a big fan of propaganda, both like the old school type that you see that's really overt,
Yeah.
like in posters, you know, the Great War, World War II as well, or the modern sort of more subversive influence campaigns starting around the Cold War and forward. So that's my angle on it. Manisa will contribute her angle as well. Yes, Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year.
We're all back.
See, there is already a first influence. You looked at the chat and then suddenly you went from, okay, let's talk about how media influences you to, oh, and by the way, Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah.
So, practical everything.
It's hard to ignore the gold.
Yeah.
The crown.
So, the thing that actually brought us to this topic, maybe let's start with that, because that's the one that really got to me. When you were talking about the difference of when you write something or when you type it. How this little switch already, how this little change already can influence the way people think. Or like the way people interact. That one really got to me. So if it's okay, let's just start with that and then we go, you know, back to the main topic.
Sure. Yeah. So I talked about this a few times, but it, basically I think what Ethan is referring to is one good way that you can sort of check any sort of position you hold or conclusion you've drawn from different premises is if you physically, with pen and paper, write down at least like a minimum of 5 reasons that you could be wrong in your conclusion or your position, which is really hard to do until you get used to it. You got to practice it. But just short ones, you know, maybe like a little paragraph, at least 5. And something about handwriting it is different, the way it works in your brain. Typing does not work. This is something that's been looked at in research. So the repetition, you know, that it takes to absorb into whatever appropriate part of your brain that is. I don't know of the sections in your brain, but it doesn't work the same way in your brain as it does as if you were to type it out on, say, a computer or even a tablet. So that's pretty interesting. To me, that says something's worth investigating there.
Yeah, no, I found that very interesting, especially the part with the writing, because I constantly type. I never write with hand. And I wouldn't have noticed any difference. But they actually made like all this research about this.
Yeah, there's an actual, you know, I should have thought to pull that up. I didn't think we'd bring it up, but I'll try and find it while we're talking, because there, you know, it's like it's a psychological experiment that was done. It's not some kind of, you know, wives' tale or whatever you want to say. legitimate thing.
Yeah. Okay, so you were talking before about the propaganda. The
Yes.
so and you said you have like this whole, because propaganda is a very broad field, right? And the reason we brought up the whole, writing with your hand, what you find, what you basically, what would disprove you, this kind of, writing that is good in order to like get you a step away from just getting completely trashed with propaganda in a sense. So it's a good tool against it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great like mitigation technique, or sort of way of allaying that a little bit. I'm trying to pull up the one problem I noticed with people that are sort of just casually familiar with this, the average person, that when you say the word propaganda, they tend to think of the sort of more old school, like enlistment posters and things like that that you would see during the World Wars and earlier. That's very overt. And not only is that only one kind, but it's not like that anymore. So it has this sort of like almost cartoonish like depiction in people's heads is when they think of this. And so that's why like modern versions are typically called influence campaigns, because the whole variety of things you can do now, and how much it's changed over the years. It's actually, the techniques themselves haven't changed a whole lot. It's just the methods. But at the core, it's not a whole lot different than now, for example, than say during the Cold War or even the First World War, like that era.
But what exactly did change? So in what sense did we advance the way we influence people? Like, in what sense did we switch? Could you make an example, a concrete one?
Sure. Well, a really obvious one is vastly enabled by the internet, is social media. So rather than say, like seeing a poster on a building that's like promoting something, like a certain cause or view of an issue, they do things like whoever it is that's trying to influence you will do things like saturate your media. So social media really enables that. So especially like modern ads, like when you do ad sales through Google or Facebook or Twitter or any of those platforms, they're targeted because they want to try and curate things towards you. So they already have a profile, a generic profile of you as a user built. You tend to like these things, you tend to favor these, you tend to like these. And so it can be targeted fairly accurately. And then what is done through an ad buy, if it's on a massive enough scale, you will sort of begin to see this picture that's not always evident unless you sort of keep track of it or pull far back from it. So where if you sign on, say, Facebook a couple times a week, and your feed and your ads and all that is just saturated with, say, a particular political message, overtly telling you to do something, like say vote for candidate X, but you're not ignoring that stuff. You're aware it's there. You're absorbing it. You're processing it. It's sticking with you. And you can see even like the sort of subtle effects of this. So like this isn't so much propaganda, but it works the same way. So this was actually a sociological research project, and Facebook kind of got in some trouble with this. And in my opinion, the researchers were slightly unethical about it, but I get why they did it the way they did. So a while back, without telling anyone, they manipulated people's Facebook feeds.
And what did they do?
It was so what they did was a couple people, they would say only let through keywords, they would only let positive posts go through their feed of like their friends. They would hide the negative or neutral posts, and then vice versa, like only let the negative ones through and hide the more positive ones. And it was randomized and controlled. And they noticed that a huge difference influences what the people whose feeds these belong to posted themselves. So the people that would saturated with negative posts and sort of ads that were attack ads, things like that, they overwhelmingly posted negative or sad posts, and vice versa with the happy stuff.
So basically, the
So that
more
alone,
negative ads you would get, the more you would get negative and post negative things.
yeah, well, it's not even ads too. It's your actual feed. So like people you know, if they posted something positive and you happen to have been selected as someone for the negative exposure, it would not show you the happy post.
Hmm.
It would hide it from you.
Okay.
And so you would be saturated with, either the negative or the positive. And there was a direct correlation, like in the influence of how you posted and what you thought and what you said and expressed.
Interesting.
And that's not even an ad of some kind. I mean, it's just things that you're reading from people you know in real life, and it's affecting you and your behavior. And that's a real base level. So when you look at something that's on like a grand level, like huge ad buys or sort of like a larger media conglomerate, see how that can influence you. So like you'll hear sometimes people joke about, I mean, I used to do this. You'll see like a political sign in someone's yard for a particular candidate. And you'll see it and think, I wasn't going to vote for that person before, but now that I saw your sign, I'm going to. And it's kind of funny because, yeah, that's silly. Like, you're not going to see one sign and change your mind. But if you're not like rock solid in your decision and you live around a bunch of people that say like 2/3 of them have signs in the yard for candidate X and the remaining third has a sign for candidate Y, it's going to sway you, even if you're not aware of it. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's a very interesting.
Subversive.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I was just saying it's way more subversive, and you can see the propagation of this technique started before the internet, though. The internet just made it a million times more effective. Most of it started with the Soviets during the Cold War, and the Stasi were actually pretty good at it too. Those were the most efficient sort of propagators of it that didn't involve technology. And you can get it to a point where you basically turn a citizenry into a network of informants on each other, like they inform on each other. And that's how you can control an entire population.
Yeah, well, that's the easiest way, or rather it's the only way that's really efficient. I have, AIDS had a very interesting question, because that's something I was curious about too. Do you know how the process, like how they determined the positive and the negative posts? Like, it's not like the people were going through the posts, right? They had either an algorithm to show positive or negative posts or something like that, right?
Yeah, it was keyword based.
Yeah, but in what sense keyword based? Like, did they just like ignore certain keywords and then go for other keywords?
So I'm gonna make these words up, but so like let's say you were not the person that they were experimenting on. It was a friend of yours, and you posted something like a post that contained the words happy. Like I'm happy. The whole sentence is like, I'm happy today because I got a new job. And it flags the post because of the word happy and, new, let's say. And it decides, okay, this is positive, and it lets it through. But if someone posts something like, let's say another one of your friends says something like, I lost my job today, I'm depressed, what am I going to do? It'll flag it for holding because of, say, the keyword depressed, things like that.
I see.
So that way people weren't involved, so they weren't accidentally influencing. By the way, that's another reason they do double-blind studies all the times. Because people will bias it unintentionally and unknowingly. So there's another example, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just wielding that for a purpose rather than avoiding it to try and be more objective.
Yeah, it's kind of annoying that people like. I mean, sure, the research. It helped the people to research it, but at the other end, it's not really the best thing to do to just go over there and be like, hey, you can see this and you can't see that on your Facebook. But
yeah, that's the ethical dilemma that they got in. And so Facebook took a lot of heat for it, and there were researchers not so much, which at first glance sounds kind of shady, but the reason the researchers didn't get so much heat for it, aside from the fact that Facebook let them do it, is the problem with a lot of social research, so sociological or anthropological research, is you can't let the people you're observing or studying know that you're doing that because it alters their behavior.
yeah.
So they were kind of stuck with this as a method. But that's
Yeah, well,
ethics
it
are
makes
another
it makes
topic.
more sense. It makes more sense that Facebook gets flagged because you don't trust the researchers. You didn't sign a waiver. Yeah, I trust those researchers to have my private information and who knows what. But you put
Well,
your data on Facebook, so it's like Facebook is meddling with you in a sense, even though it's the researchers who ask for it.
right. Well, that and the fact that like it fell within the terms of service. So like Facebook owns your posts.
Yeah.
Once you post it, it's considered theirs in public.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't violating any kind of TOS or laws or anything like that. But yeah, I didn't want to get too wrapped up in the legal or ethical aspects of it, but those are good examples, real world examples of how easy it is to influence people without them even realizing it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's very relevant now with things like the US presidency.
Mm-hmm.
It's very common for some people to say, I'm not that easily fooled, or I'm not stupid. I'm not going to read something and just believe it. And it's like, well, no, that's not what we're saying. We're saying we expose you constantly to this concept, even not overtly. You're going to be swayed by it. So that's what I like. Those are some of my interests in sociology.
Yeah. I would like, because the presidency is quite controversial, right?
Yes.
And most of the people I know from Europe, the vast majority of them, they all say like, oh, he's a horrible person and we hate him. And I just have the suspicion, because it's not like in Europe you get that much information.
Right.
You get the information you get. You don't really get that much. I really do have the suspicion that the information they do get is slightly one-sided. The same way, for example, people who watch Fox News constantly are very, very much swayed into another direction because of the media they consume. So I'm really curious, what do you think about the election? Like, what kind of impression did you have? Where was the propaganda going and how was it swaying?
Well, it's actually pretty well known. Like I'm surprised that there's, well, sort of, not really, I'll get into that there's enough people that are not convinced by evidence in their face or readily available that this happened. I mean, you can like just watch raw feeds off of like C-SPAN of testimonies by people that work for the intelligence communities to Congress, breaking it down. Here's exactly how they did it. We've been on this for years. They've always tried this. This just happened to be the first time they were successful at it. Blah, 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 blah. It's like a mountain of evidence and methods, and it exactly explains how it worked and how it was propagated. And yet there's still people that for some reason don't like that or just don't look into it. I don't know. They don't want to buy it, but I'm thinking about it now and I'm comparing it to sort of when the Russians initially kicked this up when it was still Soviet Russia. That's the sort of indicator that you get when you've reached peak performance or whatever you want to call it in a population, is when people are so entrenched in something that you can show them evidence over and over and over, and it does not matter. They will not believe it until it's. There's a famous Soviet defector, and there's some great interviews with him out there. I can't think of his name right now. Play how this works. And people will reject it. Once you condition them enough, people will reject blatant evidence in their face until it's too late, until they personally feel the heat for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how you sort of, or you want everyone to be. Like if you're the perpetrator of these methods. So it's kind of shocking, but not really. It's shocking to me going this, but then it's also not shocking in that, hey, this was successful. So of course there's people that are like that, and they don't even realize it.
Well,
They
you know,
think
but
that they're thinking independently on their own,
well,
and this is hogwash, you know, and they're not. Those are the easiest people to influence. People that think they're impervious to it, because they're not on the lookout for it. But if you look, two great examples of modern propaganda. One is way more systematic than the other. Is Fox News and RT, or Russia Today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, RT is an official arm of the government of Russia. It's way more.
Isn't that the same as with Al Jazeera, though? Doesn't Al Jazeera do the same thing?
Yeah, sure. That's, you know, I mean, that's a little bit different. It's funded by Qatar and all that, but like RT is like not, like they are not hiding, other than in name. Like if you just look about who owns what, it's state news.
Mm-hmm.
And so of course they're going to promote the narrative that favors them. Fox News is just, it's not that it's like a lot of people want to say, oh, it's dishonest, or it's I don't know, extreme or something like that. And it's not so much that it's dishonest or lying. It's that they're crafting a constant narrative to where people that have watched it enough, the only way they can make sense of it is if they buy into the entire thing. Only being bombarded with the same depiction of the state of the country and how the government's operating and where we look, you know, where we stand in the world, all that stuff. It's very meticulously designed to fit together as a complete narrative. And so it's not even necessarily that they're malicious about it, because I don't know their motives. And honestly, I don't think that it's intentional. It's just that they've discovered, from perhaps a capitalist perspective, the most efficient business model to keep viewers. Because I've looked at different data sets on viewership on different specific media outlets in the United States. And
can I ask a question? Because you know we are going a bit we are going a bit towards the left too much for my taste.
Yeah.
We have to keep it a bit neutral, because you know we are not CNN, nor are we Fox News. We have to make sure that we keep them on both sides, because the one thing, like obviously Fox News is very obvious. It's very clear to see there how people are being basically influenced, and how the media basically sort of kind of twists stuff. But that's not just the thing that happens in Fox News. It's just more obvious towards people who are more to the left that Fox News is obviously doing this. Whereas if you look at people to the right who are influenced by Fox News, they will not see it with Fox News, but I'm pretty sure they will clearly see it, for example, with like, I don't know, CNN. What is the left there?
Well, the reason I'm picking Fox News isn't because I'm liberal. It's because they're the most efficient at it. So like the next closest thing on the left, I would say, would be MSNBC. So they do it too, but far and away, just for looking at viewership levels over the years, you know, retention, that sort of thing, Fox is the most effective at it. Now, that's why I kind of made a little disclaimer there of I'm not saying they're intentionally doing this to say, have people think a certain way. I'm just saying it's likely from a business perspective alone that they've discovered that this is what keeps viewers.
Yeah.
And it just has as a side effect people thinking like this. So I'm not trying to like stick it to one political area.
No, but
or something
that's
like
why I was pointing it out, because
yeah.
like the thing is, and that's always something that irritates me. Trump is a complete idiot. When I look at him, I see a complete idiot, you know.
Oh.
And the fact that people voted for him is, in a sense, bewildering to me. But partially, I would have voted for him as well, not because I like him, because I can't stand him, but because I didn't like any other candidate. And he was just the dumbest person that I could possibly think of. And I'd rather have an idiot in there to shove it into everyone else's face. But that's just my way of thinking about it. But then you have the people who are like, yeah, Trump is actually not that bad, which he kind of is
that's
bad.
Insane.
And then,
like,
hello? And then on the other side, you have the people who are like, oh no, Trump is like Hitler. Trump is like Hitler. And I'm like, okay, that's a bit too far on the other side here, please. You know, and it's just, why? Shifty, why?
It's because people feel comfortable sort of, not necessarily label something, but characterize something in a way that they can sort of handily dismiss it or accept it. So like if you're a huge Trump supporter, it's very easy to sort of do the same thing to what he likes to do to the press as, say, someone on the far end of anti-Trump would do to Trump.
Mm-hmm.
It's not different. It's just your target's different. But I don't want to focus. I do think it's important that we look at the U.S. presidency, because this is the most very prominent recent example of how media influence and sort of language can influence things on a massive scale that matter.
Yeah.
But I don't want to concentrate too much on just this. But that's like a modern take of an influence campaign. By the way, the United States does this too. I mean, there's a section of the State Department that's their job, is to craft. It's a lot. If you ever hear the term, it's usually used as public diplomacy. That's what that's code for. Is propaganda. Like that's your job. Okay. To pump a narrative for whatever you're working for.
Huh. You know, that's so depressing.
It's, yeah, well, I guess, so I've thought a lot about this.
Yeah.
I started actually with Glenn Greenwald and The Intercept.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point, and you can find it, Glenn Greenwald says that he doesn't think journalism should be objective. He thinks that journalists should try and persuade their audience, like they used to do in, say, I think it was the early 1900s and before. This sort of like attempt to be objective as a journalist is somewhat fairly recent. And I'm guessing he says that because he's a prosecutor, and so like that's how he sees everything, is of position X or whatever. And at first I thought, oh, that's abhorrent. You shouldn't do that. That's ridiculous. But the more I thought about it, like, well, what's worse? If you're not aware, because it's impossible to be completely objective. You can't do that. So what's worse for the consumer, the media consumer? That someone is claiming to be objective and then they do their best and still kind of fail at it, or that they openly tell you, I'm trying to persuade you of something, and you're aware of it, like blatantly.
Yeah, but like, I mean, you get influenced either way, whether, they tell you or not. But the thing is, at least, wouldn't it be better that they at least try to be objective?
That Yeah, so it's like I go back and forth on this, and I'm like, yeah, but that's what the opinion and editorial sections are for, like the point of in news outlets. Like that's why I laugh when I hear things like the New York Times is a liberal newspaper. Yeah, when it comes to the editorials and the opinion section, just don't read those sections.
Yeah,
Read the news section.
yeah.
Um,
Well, but yeah, I have to
I
say,
mean, yeah, you're not going to completely avoid it, but
no,
I
but
mean,
I have
whatever.
to
It's going
say,
to
I
exist.
have seen so recently so many newspapers where, or even online, where in the news section you have editorials constantly. You know, you have a slow news day, and then suddenly you have basically a commentary hit piece inside of the news, and that just shouldn't happen at all.
I haven't witnessed that in the media sources that I check out, with exception to something close. I don't want to quite accuse them of this, but so like everyone's favorite punching bag right now is CNN. But I don't attribute maliciousness or um, I don't know, intent to CNN's problems. Because if you look at what they're dealing with, CNN is way less of a news source as it is an entertainment source. But they have to use news as a way to entertain. That's why you will see the same 30-second video clip of a story over and over and over again. It's because that they have to fill that 24-hour news cycle. It's just nonstop. And obviously you're going to run out of things and ways to talk about it. And it's just like between that and like a screw up that you don't realize until later and you're repeating it over and over again, yeah, you're going to look bad.
Mm-hmm.
But that's way different than, say, intentionally misinforming the public. So I think people take it too far when they call them like liars or fake news. It's like,
Well, you know, the
how do you
moment you
know?
put out fake news, you kind of put out fake news. But yeah, people tend to see everything a bit black and white. No, but the thing, because CNN, sure, CNN is more like the TV thingy. I was talking directly about newspapers, where I would open a newspaper that's supposed to be a newspaper and read the article. And I'm afraid because of the fact that I only have one screen, I can't really look too much because I have like 5 windows open and I hardly can see those. But basically what happened was you would go for the news page, you know, and then you would see a person basically talk purely opinion about something that happened like days ago. And it was clearly an opinion piece. It was clearly an editorial piece. And it was just in the news section, and that was seriously disturbing to me. And I think I don't know if Logic actually tweeted out a few of these, because that was not just once that happened. It happened several times, in different papers as well. So like eventually it was really annoying to see this kind of stuff inside of the news section, because I deliberately tried to just get the data, and every time I see some weird editorial nonsense in there, it just really irritates me.
Well, it's frustrating to me as well. So like every once in a while I notice like really overt stuff, but most of the time it's more subtle in a rhetoric sort of way, which is, to me, that's an indicator that it's unintentional. But it's frustrating to me because I'm perfectly aware that the average media consumer isn't going to pick up on it like I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to be influenced like that, unintentionally and unknowingly.
Would you maybe like to make an example about the subtle kind of influencing? Because I'm pretty sure that we made an example before when we were offline, where already just switching the language completely changes the way you talk about things. But even just
right.
yeah. But could you make a
So
couple of examples where you see these subtle differences and you see how it can influence people?
okay. So here's a couple quick examples. And this is really important to keep in mind though, just overall, is the way that this entire thing works is slowly over time. It's usually not obvious and like one really big push. And that's why it's not picked up on or noticeable. So anyway, We talked about a couple examples offline, and one of them was so in English, uh, if you like, you could say the sentence, "I dropped my pen," but if you do a transliteration, I think we use German.
Yeah.
Uh, you said it was the pen was dropped by me or to me, right?
Yeah, basically what you would say in German is der Stift ist mir runtergefallen. The pen, it's not even by me. You know, that's the funny thing. It happened
Yeah,
to me
that's
in a sense. It's like the pen dropped to me, which doesn't make sense in English. But I
yeah,
basically had the accident happening to me where the pen dropped off my hand. So it basically is something that that happened to me with the pen, and not I dropped the pen. So it's very different as a way of phrasing.
yeah. It's like if you take a transitive verb in English and you switch the subject and the object. So it's almost it has this like quasi effect of switching between active and passive language in English.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're constantly, let's say you're reading about uh it's not obvious if it's your native language usually, but if you're reading about things in the passive voice all the time, you're going to be less likely to attribute negative characteristics, let's say, if that's what the nature of the story is, to the people involved in it. So, like, if you're reading stuff about, say, terrorist attacks in a language that speaks that way, or in English that uses a passive voice, it's going to sound way more like less blameworthy, and it's going to focus way more on like the actual act, the incident, versus the people causing it. And usually that's not intentional. Sometimes it is. But that's a good one to look out for is the writer of the piece using active or passive voice.
Is because now that you bring that up, I've noticed, and maybe that's really also just a coincidence, because Logic and I had several problems with media where basically every time you would see certain certain news from foreign countries, they would have passive language in a sense. And we have noticed that the media copies a lot, just pretty much copy and paste. And we were often wondering if they take foreign data, foreign media, foreign whatever, knowledge, news. Could it be that they partially just mess up because they just completely like literally translate whatever is said and just make sure it sounds English enough? Like when they take, for example, a news, I don't know, German news, where like, 50 people got killed through a car accident. Or 50 people got killed through a car, whatever, terrorist, whatever. Would it be possible that they keep it in passive because German is sort of kind of on a passive? Or would they actually deliberately do it? Like, wouldn't...
Well, yeah, I would say that's a very realistic possibility, but also in like professional level and academic level writing, it's very often encouraged or insisted upon that you write in the passive voice. It's considered unprofessional to write in active or I voice. So like if I were on, say, I don't know, something on ethics, I wouldn't say in the paper, in this example, you are not permitted to do this. I would say it's not permissible for one to behave this way in such an example. You see the difference?
Yeah.
So that's considered the professional way to write, the appropriate way to write. It's non-accusatory. It's not distracting from your point. But like if you write that way, and then especially if you are writing in a language that's already more passive sounding, I could see that being the case, especially if it's like, I don't know how wide this works, but in the United States, you have the Associated Press or Reuters, which your time, if it's not an investigative scoop by a particular outlet,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you get the main news story, and then all the other news outlets grab it off of that. And you, especially like if you look at like local stuff, it's like copy paste from the AR wire,
I see.
or sorry, the AP wire. Yeah, so that could be it too.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't have the resources, to sit down and write an
Well,
article in 20 minutes.
sure, and also like they are pretty much under pressure because they have to make a lot of data and a lot of news in very short time. And
Exactly.
yeah, and it's
That's
not like
that's
I
actually
mean,
what's led to a lot of mistakes in modern journalism.
yeah, and also
Like
it's
that's
kind
why
of
I take issue with a lot
bleeding
of
because they
the
don't get that much money, so they can't afford more people to do it.
Yeah, it's this obnoxious cycle, but there's been a few outlets that have been able to pull out of that in the United States lately. Washington Post by far has been able to get on top of that and get out of that.
How did it handle this?
Um, it was very successful at a couple of things, but basically what they did was they were able to maximize revenue through electronics subscriptions. That's the vast majority of their base now.
Mm-hmm.
They made sure they focused their business model
Yeah,
on that, and then everything that funds that. And so that way they were able to increase their revenue, and they fed that back into their staff
that's
and
awesome.
everything to sort of, so they would, yeah, so they would have way more people to sort of fact check, editorialize, and so that it's easier to step, because it's easy to let things slip by and make mistakes if you don't have the staff.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so it can be disingenuous to say attribute malice to things and like call them fake.
Mm. Well,
So they were able to do that big time, especially thanks in part to what's his name? Is it Jeff Bezos? Yeah, that owns Amazon, and then he bought the Washington Post and helped them restructure their business model.
nice.
So they've been able to actually pull ahead again of the New York Times in that respect. It's interesting.
I had
But
something in
yeah.
mind that I completely lost it.
Oh, sorry.
Gee.
Did I
No,
derail you?
no, no. It's the lack of coffee. Sorry, completely off topic here, but it's the lack of coffee. Yeah, and also too much streamy. I love that though. You know this thing, this brandy, whatever.
Oh,
I found this in the store, and because it's it's French, it's Saint Remy thingy. But if you read it English, it would be streamy, which is absolutely perfect for a stream. I'm totally gonna use it for the rest. Okay. Anyway, back to the topic. The thing about passive and active. How do you end up with people saying that the car bumped into people? Because that's neither passive nor active. But you see, for example, golf, whatever, bumps into people. How does that end up on the news?
you mean that way of phrasing it?
Yeah, because that's neither
Uh,
passive nor does it make sense.
um, it's kind of passive because excuse me, it's missing. There's no I statements or anything like that. There's no I, you, we, they kind of thing. And it's true. The vehicle did strike these. It's not assigning agency to the vehicle, for example. Um, it's describing the event without uh, being more specific as far as the causes. It's not talking about the causes at all. All it's talking about is what happened. So, like when you have something like the car plowed into a crowd of people, well, it's true. It's not saying the car has its own agency and the car did this. It's just saying, here's what we know. There's a crowd, there's a car, and the car plowed into the crowd of people. So that's usually what you get the first thing out the gate too, when the press doesn't have access to say information about the driver, the purpose behind it, all that stuff. But they want to talk about it. They want to report on it.
Mm-hmm.
So those are factual statements. It's just that you as a consumer have to realize what's going on and don't attribute malice so easily to news sources. I mean, so like that example, they're not saying anything false. they're just saying this is what happened and this is the best we have right now for
You
information.
know, the reason I'm asking this is partially because I'm pretty sure that there is a bit of a language barrier for me personally. So I have a personal investment in understanding why on earth they're saying it. Because when you say it's passive, you know, people got plowed under by a car. That's, yeah, there was plowing under of people by a car. That would make sense to me. Someone took a car and plowed people over would make sense to me. A car plowing people over would not make sense to me, which is why every time I read it just completely confuses the heck out of me.
Yeah, and maybe that's a language thing like you were talking about before, because I have seen headlines similar to that, but all the ones I've seen were not like native English. They were either translated or in a different language. I mean, maybe they exist, but I haven't seen them. And that could just be how people talk. I don't know, because there's only a certain number of countries that I'm familiar with.
Yeah. Yeah, and also it's not like I'm from one country. I got like the pure bash of mix of languages before I was 6, so it's not like I have it's so bad. I mean, it's good that you know several languages, but if at the age of 6 you don't have one mother tongue, mother language, whatever, but just start talking everything cross each other constantly, it's hard. It's really hard to focus on one language. And you never really feel like you're like one or the other. It's never like one feels actually, you know, your language. Because, yeah, you speak them all good, but you never really speak them really good. Know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
like, imagine
too spread out.
There's this thing in South Tyrol where the people have to say what mother tongue they are. And South Tyrol is a particular place in the north of Italy. It used to be pre-World War One. It used to be Austria, and then it swapped to Italy. And then there was like this whole mess between World War One and World War Two, where they tried to get rid of the German people and invade it with Italian people. And so there was struggle since then. However, what is nowadays the case is you have people there who have to write down on the piece of paper or whatever in their documentation if they are German mother tongue, Italian mother tongue, or you know whatever you have to pick. That's either the one or the other. And so the ones or Latin, because they have like the minority there as well. So depending on what you write down there, you get more or less possibilities to get into a job. For example, like if you are from German mother tongue, because it's the majority of people, they have about, I don't know, 70-80% of places reserved for those people. If you apply for a job and they see, okay, we have only 15% Italians, or even though we are supposed to have 20, and you're Italian mother tongue, chances are very high you get a job, even though your qualifications are not as good as the one from the German side. Okay?
Right.
And so that's it's nudgy. It's a bit of a weird thing. But now imagine having like that doesn't, like, that didn't really happen to me because I'm not involved in any of this. But imagine people moving there as foreigners, and so neither of those languages are their mother language. They may speak one better than the other, but they will never really consider any of those the mother tongue. And yet they will have to choose which one is their mother tongue. I mean, it's, what do you choose, you know? Like, you either go for strategy there, or you just pick, like, the one that's more convenient for you, even though it's not true.
Yeah, that's tough. So I don't know if you set it up this way. Do you have it so I could post a URL in the chat?
In the chat
see what
next
happens.
by. I don't think there is a chat in here, but you can, I think, just post it here.
In the live chat,
there you go.
I posted it.
Because you have the wrench, so you're fine.
Okay, so that link, he speaks. Yeah, I'm terrible at paying attention to the chat. So that link is from an older interview from a Soviet defector whose job it was to do sort of like the core of what I've been talking about so far. And he explains very well how this works. And it's very easy to see how it's not that hard to adapt from modern technology. Because that itself could be an entire.
Yeah. I think I saw
show,
this. This is like an
honestly.
interview, right? With the.
Yeah.
Like, I can't open it because I'm afraid it will just play and just completely talk over us. Because, as I said.
Oh yeah, it will.
So preferably not.
Well, it's like an hour and 20 minutes long.
Yeah,
I
maybe
just
not.
thought people would.
Yeah. Okay, but it's good to have.
I
the
didn't.
link.
I didn't want to watch it right now.
Yeah, I will.
I just wanted people to maybe check it out if they're interested to see more.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about. He
Can
does
you
a
do
much
me
better
a
job of
favor?
explaining it. Because
Sorry for interrupting you. Can you do me a favor and post this on the Twitters, and I'm just gonna copy it from there and put it in the description below. For those people of us, or even just in the Hangout chat, that would be fine enough. Either way. Because then the people who will listen to it later, if there are any, I don't know, they can see that later.
Okay. I put it in the live chat and then I put it in your Twitter DM.
Okay. Oh yeah, got it. So let me see. Live chat. Copy link address. No, because it's if it is what I think it is, which it's probably, because it's a very long interview, but it's very interesting. It's very insightful, actually.
Yeah, it's funny because it's very easy to think that this is all kind of like romanticized and just like trumped up, no pun intended, sort of methods. But it's very real, and it's crazy when you hear and see how this is working. It just completely opens your eyes to a lot of things, like as a media consumer. It's like, I don't know. To me, it was like, holy shit, this is the real deal. Like, I didn't think it was really like this. This seems way too fantastical to work this way, but it does.
You know, it's weird as well because, you know, obviously everyone has always their favorite side. It's like, oh yeah, Russia has all this propaganda going on. But the thing is, the US are just as bad with the whole propaganda. They're just as much into propaganda, which you may not necessarily see in the US that much because you're basically completely immersed in it. But I noticed this a lot in Europe, where basically you had the clash of the two different media sites, where once in a while Russian propaganda would come over, and then once in a while, you know, you would have US propaganda come over, and they just basically fought each other in a sense.
Yeah, and that's why I try very hard not to assign any sort of like moral value judgment to it. Because, I mean, the United States does this. Pretty much any smart foreign power that has any kind of interest or influence in the world and wants to stay that way or get better is going to engage in this. So whether the whole thing, you know, as a concept is ethical or not, I see it as a completely different topic as to whether it's a smart move.
Yeah.
I really don't think that this is some kind of like demonizing of Russia or Russians. I don't look at it that way at all. I just look at it as, hey, we all engage in this, and this time you were better at it than we were.
Yeah.
We're suffering for it.
Yeah. Okay, I put the link. Hopefully it shows up. What should I put as title? Yeah, link mentioned in the video. There. No. Okay. No.
Time you were better at it than we were.
Yeah. Okay, wait a second. Something is going wrong
suffering
here.
for it.
What is going on here? Why am I hearing myself? Okay,
Too much asking.
What's this? What is this? Where's this from? Oh, I got it. I found it. Never mind.
8 says, so did this Cold War brainwashing stop, or did they just get better at hiding it? It's definitely did not stop, and it's sort of diversified. That's what I meant before about the overt and subversive. So the overt thing is sort of like Russia Today is just an arm of the state news agency. I mean, that's just point blank propaganda, and it's just it's just renamed RT, but it's completely Kremlin controlled. And then you had the sort of subversion type methods that I talked about before, using social media and things like that. But if you watch that YouTube clip, or not clip, but interview with the Soviet defector, I highly recommend you set aside some time to listen to this man, because he explains very well how this works. Even though it's older, it's you can still see how it applies today.
And aside from that, you have to also like go back a step and realize this is not just Russia, because the Russians are very good at it. They had a lot of how should I say, experience with it. They were very good at it at first. But look at what he does. Look at what he says. Then step a step back and see if you can find this kind of stuff in either your own country or your own media or your own whatever, because it is there. It clearly is there. Maybe not as clear, maybe not as obvious, but
no, the United States is probably one of the most obvious examples. I mean, you can go pretty much anywhere in the world and see the influence of, say, movies coming out of Hollywood. Like, American culture is everywhere. And that's not because strictly that they're like successful businesses somehow, and then other countries aren't nearly as successful. That's not the case. I mean, commercial espionage exists, propagation exists. It's just not done in the name of something evil or auspicious. It's just, we want to promote our, and when I say we, I mean our government, the United States government wants to promote not just Western values, but U.S. American values. And that's a huge way they do it. And that's one reason groups like the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association, that, out of many other things, do things like watch for violations of copyright laws. That's one huge reason, is they have to propagate this. That's one reason they're so heavily backed by legal teams and the government. And you can see this going back for years and years and years. This isn't a new thing. And yeah, you're absolutely right. And I really want to hammer this home, that it's not limited to Russia. Like, the United States is by far the most effective at this. And the world is the United States. Where can you go and not see, for example, a McDonald's? It's just American culture is pushed anywhere that the U.S. government can do it. And that's a major reason.
It makes me wonder though, because Russia has not even remotely as much influence on the world. They're good, but they're not that good.
Right.
And I was thinking by myself, when you hear the people complaining about Russia having influence on the US election, it's like, yeah, they started with the more overt stuff. Then basically the US was much more efficient in propagating, and now they kind of just slapped it back into their face. Because I'm pretty sure that Russia learned a trick or two from the US itself.
Oh yeah. Well, a big reason too that Russia has really redirected most of their resources into these methods, as opposed to, say, military operations and things like that, is they're way more cheaper and cost effective. So Russia doesn't stand a chance militarily of accomplishing what they wish to, that they've already accomplished in several ways with things like this. They know that they don't stand a chance at, say, going up against NATO. They would be crushed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they turn to this. It's cheap, it's more effective, it's kind of under the radar if you don't know what's going on. I mean, it's a smart move. And they honed it over the years.
Yeah.
And they got good at it. And this time they win. They won this one.
Yeah. Let's see what happens the next election. There's was it Because I was looking at the chat,
nice.
and Austin Gray, he was asking about alternative media, but then I guess the same thing applies, you know, like for example, if you see Alex Jones, Crowder, TYT, I mean, partially, I think the most important thing, I mean, TYT excluded because they get sponsored by Qatar, but
Right.
isn't it
Well,
the
you mean
case?
included?
Yeah, excluded from that particular list at this moment, because what I think is very interesting is I've noticed this a lot where people start pretty much in the center-ish. Obviously, everyone has this, you know, quackeries, but they start pretty much off at the center, and then they slowly get dragged either to one side or to the other, because there are certain biases that just get reinforced constantly. And can we really say that they are just, you know, like, because sure, they have a one-sided view, they have a very biased view, and they're propagating it, but it seems to me that it's more an issue of these are the viewers that are watching it, and therefore they get dragged into that direction more than they actually want to go into this direction.
I'm not quite sure I follow you. I think I might. Could you?
So for example, if you take let's say if you take I don't know. Let's take Louder with Crowder, because those are the guys I was watching a couple of months ago because I was still interested, and then I lost it. So they started off-ish with the whole, you know, yeah, we are like for the Republican candidate, let's bring up a couple of, you know, points why and so on and so forth. And there they still seemed kind of sane, on the sane side. But then the more you went on, the more they went, you know, basically Christian on you. You know, with a lot of ideology pushed in, a lot of, which before wasn't really there that much. I mean, it was there. You knew where they were coming from, what kind of ideology they were, you know, focusing on. But they kind of were more sticking to the talking points. And then the further they went, the more just this whole dogmatism kind of flow in. And I don't know, but every time I see a YouTuber or a YouTube thingy getting bigger, even if you take Rubin Report, when Dave Rubin started off, he had this, you know, whole thing with like waking up and having it more neutral, everything. But then he just completely got dragged off and just completely ended up in his little echo chamber himself. Where now it's really hard for him to actually go in completely the other way and completely the other direction. As much as he tries, he will still kind of be stuck in this little group of his. Or am I completely off there?
No, I think I see what you're saying, and it's funny you say you bring up Ruben in that, because I almost tweeted out something very similar to what we're talking about at him earlier. I don't, you know, I really hesitate to say he's in an echo chamber, and not so much, and more like he. I'm trying to think how to phrase this, because to me, echo chamber implies you're surrounding yourself with yes men.
Well, yeah, maybe it's badly phrased, but he gets very much influenced by a certain side more than another. Yeah, he doesn't get exposed that much to the opposite side. Yeah.
He's not. It's not so much loyalty as it is easily influenced.
Yeah.
Is the impression I get. So like that would be a great explanation as to say how he can go from being in a group like TYT, and then within a fairly short amount of time, sounding like the Koch brothers who fund him.
Yeah.
And he's sincere. He's sincere. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think it's like a malice thing or even a stupid thing. I just think he's influenced.
Yeah. No, with the alternate, that's why I took TYT out, because TYT, I'm sorry, I just can't see them just being in their box. To me, this is clearly manufactured what they're doing, but I may be wrong, and if I am, I'm sorry, TYT, but I just don't believe I am. but when you see people like, you know, Dave Rubin, or even people like Secular Talk and stuff like that, it really seems to me they get very much influenced, and like, because every person has their own audience. The people who are following me, after I went and basically told people, okay, you know, Trump is an idiot, but he's not Hitler, I suddenly got in a couple of, Christian people. And because I made Islam videos, they were really into it. And then I started to make another Christian video or something like that. And then, those people were like super upset with me. Because suddenly, I'm just going completely against what I'm supposed to go for, And that's why I was planning to make the next video about, how is this guy called again? This weird Canadian who goes victim.
I'm not sure.
Not victim. The Canadian who went against a certain bill because, how was it called?
Oh, Peterson?
Yeah, Peterson. Because Peterson, like everyone of this particular group, where they're like, you need to be skeptical and stuff. Because Peterson says a couple of things that are like really interesting. I don't know if they're correct or not, but they're very interesting. And so it's nice to hear. But then, for example, he has this talk where he basically takes a piece of literature and treats it as complete pure fact. Whereas it's basically the opinion of one person who wrote that book. And then
the closest thing...
there on...
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and then from there on, he builds up this whole interpretation of it. And lets people basically take that as for granted, as lets them absorb it as fact. And the way he does it is very fascinating to me. But like I look at this video and I, try to cut it down and try to, disassemble it in a sense, and get to the core of what he's actually saying. And it is, if you dissect what he's saying, it sounds like pure madness. It really sounds crazy.
Yeah.
And like,
oh, you know what?
The moment I will put up this video, which will eventually happen if I manage to fix the computer properly, but if I will put up this video, I can guarantee you that I will lose half of my subscribers because I got them for the Islam videos.
Well, you made me think of something that actually I caught myself doing earlier today that's similar to this entire topic. What it was I saw a news article and I thought to myself, oh, I know someone that would like that. I should send it to them.
Mm-hmm. And
I was about to send it to him and I realized that by like it, I meant agree with it. Not it's intellectually appealing generically. It's they already think this way, so they'll want to read something that reaffirms their beliefs.
Yeah.
And so I didn't send it to him.
Makes sense. Yeah. Well,
it's that base level that you don't think about.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously.
That's a good thing to like take to like. I don't know if anyone else is in sort of an academic environment like I am, but when someone says they like something like that, you say, well, do you like it or do you agree with it? Because I can enjoy things I don't agree with.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you'll be surprised at how many times the answer is I just agree with it.
Yeah. No. I think there is this good example when we talk about jokes, right? When you have comedians on the stage, first of all, it is impressive to people. They just like make comedy. But something I noticed a lot is, you have comedians always have a certain particular audience, where the audience, at least in a way, has a political thingy that sorta kinda ish agrees with the comedian. Where when the comedian tells a joke, he doesn't only tell a joke. He makes fun of something that people, find annoying or find upsetting, and then basically turns it into a joke. So they don't only laugh about something being funny, but also release their frustration about it by laughing about it, in a sense.
Right.
And so...
Well, that's another thing... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and so when you hear certain comedians, you may find a joke funny, and someone may not find a joke funny, and the only difference between you and that person is that person did not a priori agree with what the person had to say.
Yeah, exactly. That's people. It's like a form of agreement, like reassuring the sort of what you already hold. It's like reinforcing it. Oh, this is what I was thinking of earlier. So you were talking about sort of echo chambers and things like that. And I I mean, it's one thing to sort of intentionally like seek out to surround yourself with people that are like essentially yes men, or that you're avoiding conflict and things like that. But here's the thing, as as someone who studies sociology, that's what people do. They hang out with people that are like them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why would you hang out with someone that is nothing like you and you have nothing in common with, and you're even at odds with each other? Like, you don't do that. The others like them because it's comfortable, they feel safe, etc. Happens
Yeah.
all the time. It's just human nature, and
Yeah.
that's one reason. Do that with their news consumption, their media consumption.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even like a thing to like. I don't think it's a thing to like berate or mock people for, unless they're doing it like specifically overtly to avoid conflict,
No,
because
but
that's just human behavior.
yeah. But I would say, for example, if you take someone like Rubin Report, Dave Rubin clearly is the kind of person who, if you take it easy, you can get him to see the other side. Obviously, because of the fact that he kind of got dragged into one direction, because that's kind of more the thing. But if you would take someone like Dave and just sit him down and just like give him counterpoints that he probably didn't necessarily even know existed, he would probably be perfectly fine, at least, elaborating them, right? And maybe, try to make them work with his current way of believing. I mean, that's the main reason he went out of TYT, He figured, okay, there's something completely off, and I want to have an open mind. And then, he just popped out of it, and then, he kind of got dragged along. And in, like, the circle he's in now, that's a circle of people who mostly disagree with him, and so obviously he gets dragged more towards that side. But at the end of the day, if you would go over and repeatedly, I would say, expose Dave Rubin to very different ideas, I don't think you would have much of a counter push to eventually make him go more towards the center.
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting influence campaign on Dave
you cut
Rubin.
out. You did cut out. Could you repeat that, please?
I was just joking. I said it'd be interesting to see if we could create some kind of influence campaign for Dave Rubin, just like on the fly.
Yeah. Yeah. No, but before, when you mentioned the thing with, like, the guy who agreed with something or the guy who would like something, that's actually a nice point, where we basically send people something that they like or that they agree with, because we know that they like it and they agree with it, and so we are more sympathetic, like more positive in their view, because we basically feed them candy. And where you deliberately say, you know what, maybe I should just not send it to him. That was a very interesting thing. And I think maybe that's just the way to go, where, I mean, that's what I always hope for, because in my comment section, everyone sort of kind of is always nice and lovey-dovey, and I know I make mistakes, but unless you actually tell me what I'm doing wrong or where I'm thinking wrong, it won't even come up to my radar. So how am I supposed to fit that? And Logic and I have the same problem, where we're like, we love comments that tell us, hey, we like your video. But we love much more the comments where they're like, you know what, how about you think about this, and how about you think about that? Because you might have cognitive dissonance there.
Yeah. No, I like feedback. Constructive feedback's the best. I mean, sure, compliments are nice too, of course, but you're always going to know how you can like improve upon it.
Wikipedia snippet asks, how do you pronounce gnocchi? Gnocchi with ñ. G is ñ. Weirdly enough. That's Italian.
Oh, just so for anyone that didn't see it, I put in the live chat, and Isa, I DM'd you as well, a link to the study that manipulated specifically Facebook.
Oh, wait. Do you have this in the Hangout as well? Can you put it there as well?
Yeah, let me pull that up. So if you go, this is the actual like directory where you can find the actual So like there's a whole bunch of formats you can get in. So like there's the abstract full text, and you can get the PDF. Um, but the abstract is at the top, and then if you want to look into the details. But this is the study I was talking about. So I know someone in the chat was mentioning that they suspected I think it was eights suspected they noticed something about their feed a while back. So I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
You could be.
But they don't really put out they don't really point out the people though. It's not like they tell you you were involved or not.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of like what I was talking about before. It's like you can't tell people, otherwise it.
That was a quite interesting chat. Okay, give me just a sec. I'll just put in the link. I seriously hope those links work, because they might not. Because I have to cut off half of it. Just give me a sec here. Okay,
the
can
one
someone...
I posted in the actual YouTube feed works for me.
No, can someone please go and check? I either refresh the page or go and check if the links work.
Maybe put it in the oh, I see.
Because like I put it in the description so like people can find it even when the chat has gone on 50 comments further.
The one that I put in the chat works though.
The one that you put in the chat.
It's not the same URL.
Okay.
Oh, I know what you need to do. What? It's because you looked at it through an analytics thing. So copy it, like click on it from what I sent you, and then copy that URL bar and put it in there.
The whole thing. You know what? That might be bad. That might be bad with the other one as well. Just give me a sec. Copy link address. Gosh, now I don't remember. Ah, no, it's good. It's good. So here, let me put this, and here, let me put that.
So after the .org, it should be /content instead of.
Okay, try that now. Try
there
that
you go. Those are the Hangouts links.
God.
No,
but like if I delete just the Hangout part, that should be fine, right?
Oh, it gives me a thing that's telling me it's redirecting me, and then it's the correct address.
Yeah, because it says Hangouts and so on, and then redirect. But if I just delete that, you should be
just
able.
Copy the in the DM.
DM in Twitter?
So if you click on that, so it opens the tab, and then copy that URL out of the top and put it in the description instead of just directly from the DM. I think that'll work.
Yeah, but the problem is I don't want, for example, the video to play and stuff.
Oh,
in the case of Facebook, it doesn't matter, but like the video is kind of annoying.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was saying. I was just referring to the research.
Yeah, okay, wait, so DM, here we go, Facebook manipulation. Aha, perfect. Okay, let me see if eventually we'll get this in. Eventually we'll get this done. One day. Facebook research, okay. Ha, no. Okay, that link should work now.
Cool.
And the interview.
Yes.
The interview. Let me click on that too. No. Sorry for everyone for being so silent. So, okay. Now, can someone please go and check if the links work now?
The Facebook one works for me.
Good.
Give me just a second. Yeah, they both work for me.
Perfect. Okay, so now the links work. And I completely lost where we were.
I think we were just bashing Dave Rubin. No, just kidding.
No, the thing is, because like TYT, I have absolutely no sympathy for.
Yeah.
People like Secular Talk, lukewarm on that guy. He just, I can't listen to him. I personally can't. It's not really that he's a bad guy. It's just that I personally can't listen to him. I listen to 5 minutes and then I'm just turning off. I'm just dazing away.
Yeah.
And it's more that how he talks than what he actually says, which is why it's hard to actually pay attention. But Dave is this kind of person where you see his honesty. It's bleeding out of him. It's genuinely just like, you breathe honesty when you look in that person's face, And so he's this kind of, genuinely good-hearted person who just constantly ends up being manipulated left and right in a sense. Which is why I think I'm more into talking about him.
Well, I've tweeted at Dave like over however long it's been that I've been on Twitter, and he responds sometimes.
That's interesting.
And I don't. Yeah, well, and I don't like outright mock him. I'm just like, come on, you're better than this, like sort of like encouraging him to try and shove him into a better direction. Without being insulting, because I don't think he's, like I said before, I don't think he's being malicious. I just think he's easily.
That's also a thing, how easy is it for you to be manipulated? Because he very easily.
Yeah, like I can.
Yeah.
I can think of one person in my personal life right now that I could convince to do just about anything, and it's their intelligence, their it's just they're very easily influenced.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's something where Dave strikes me as being very susceptible to being influenced, because he wants to be open, he wants to learn something new. So it's obvious that, he can easily be swayed by something that might not necessarily be true, because he doesn't have this let me fact check this kind of, skepticism that pops up. To be fair, most skeptics don't have that, but I never said that. So... thing is, I'm just as much.
My fist in the air right now. Thank you.
Thing is, I'm just as much. I mean, I'm much easier to be influenced than, for example, Logic. Because Logic has this kind of, he's a reptile. What do you expect? He has this kind of brain where, while you talk, he already dissects the flaws inside of what you say. And then he waits and waits and waits until you basically hang yourself and you don't even realize, because you have cognitive dissonance. And then he just goes with one poke and he says, that's completely nonsense. And then you're like, heart attack. That's, either get used to it or you get a heart attack. So, but I am much more easily influenced than he is. And so I know exactly what goes on when you get influenced that easily, and then eventually you figure out, holy smokes, what have I done there? What have I done there? Holy shit. No, and then once you realize it, it's already too late, because it's not like you can, go back in a hangout and say, hey, I was completely wrong there. You can put a note underneath, you can, which most people don't even read, to be fair, and or you can like point it out in a tweet, or you can go to the person where you said I was wrong and say I was wrong, but that person probably doesn't even know what you're talking about, because it's like a couple of days later, so
right.
It's really hard to actually, and that's also a thing where people are like, okay, I made a mistake, now how am I dealing with this if I cannot like completely go back to it. Like, I had this weird hangout where I partially didn't even understand the arguments. They just didn't click. And the moment they clicked, which was long after the hangout, I was like, how stupid was I not seeing that problem? But back then, I was just completely not able to follow, right? And so what do you do now? It was a hangout. It's not like you can go back. It's not like you can go back in time and fix it up. It's just... That's why people drink and get drunk and say it was the alcohol.
Anyway. I think on Twitter, the few times I've done that is I'll go back and find the tweet that I made, retweet it, and then in the comments say, you know, whatever it is that I want to say about it. But usually I just figure if someone really wants to know, you know, and bring it back up, then they'll say something to me and then I'll correct myself then. I mean, because like otherwise it's impossible. You're just constantly going through and
Yeah.
and that's kind of one thing that bothers me a lot about a lot of aspects of different online communities is a lot of people are out for like this gotcha kind of moment
Yeah.
where it's like everyone wants to like one up or debate each other subtly, and it's like I don't enjoy that. I don't like that. Like I enjoy discussions where we kind of bounce ideas off each other and sort of correct or modify our own views on things. That's what I like. I don't see it as like this personal like aha gotcha kind of thing like a lot
Yeah.
of people do. I just don't see how that's productive or enjoyable.
But to be fair, it's also a bit of a method thingy, where, for example, if because Logic does that a lot, where he takes a video, and then he really like snaps at people, kinda, and then eventually he snaps at himself, and it makes himself look stupid just to balance it out again, because he wants to be.
I don't mean like
the jolly. He wants to be the joke.
Yeah, and I don't mean like if you're making some kind of not necessarily a response video, but like a critique or something, that's totally different. But like how you and I are talking right now, for example, like I'm not actively looking to sort of like one up you or like somehow like I don't know, quote unquote win, like in a conversation. I don't care. That's not my goal, and I think that happens way too much. But
yeah,
that's a whole other topic, I guess.
Yeah, and it also like the environment gets very quickly very hostile when you have people debating each other and okay, I'm against this person in a sense. It gets a very, very different how should I say? It gets a very different atmosphere.
Yeah. Like there's people on Twitter that I occasionally talk with that I could not disagree with more in some aspects of like political positions and things like that. But we're cool to each other.
Yeah.
We're civil. We don't try and snipe at each other, or if we do, it's like obviously a joke. That kind of thing.
There you have to be careful though, because sometimes people take stuff as joke and other people just find it super serious.
Yeah, obviously it's hard when you can't have like intonation and stuff, especially if you don't know the person well. But
yeah.
I guess my point is like that's my limit. It's like, nah, it's okay to kind of like prod each other a little bit. I don't have an issue with that. But it's like when it's someone's goal to just constantly, just I don't know. It's like how do you enjoy a discussion like that? To me, it's way more beneficial not to just the people involved in the discussion, but the people listening to it, to just kind of see the evolution of thought. And it doesn't sort of like make you, as someone involved in it, kind of cautious or hesitant to say something because you're like waiting for the other person to like jump on you or something. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, and partially, I think it might be, yeah, partially I think it might also be like you're much easier to say something silly when you are online, and it's much easier for others to correct you on it when you feel like you're in a surrounding where you can actually speak your mind. Like if we are in this hangout here now, and I say something stupid, you might go, it's kind of not really correct, and then I can actually think about it and change my mind about it. But if we were just fighting against each other in that moment when you would say that's something stupid, first of all, I may not even say it because I want to be careful. But if I would say it and you would, say something against it, my first thought would not be, okay, let me think about this. My first thought would be, okay, how can I go back to it? How can I, punch back on it? How can I, make sure that you don't come at me again? And so this thought thingy, this thought process of mine, where I can evolve my thinking, never really happens. You never really get into this gear of, update your software kind of thing.
Yeah, that's one thing I really enjoyed about when was it the ASU Origins, I think, with Lawrence. What the hell's his last name? physicist, Krauss, um, who I have issues with. But anyway, I don't know if he's the one who sort of started this in like the atheist type community, but they kind of started pushing this more conversation dialogue format rather than the debate format. And I was thrilled when that happened. I got so much more out of that. Like it felt more like an academic or classroom setting. It's like I'm actually learning things. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to take a side and it's like uncomfortably like antagonistic and I
To
don't
be
care
fair, it's
about
a
that sort
matter of. I
thing.
mean, the people who watch debates, they kind of just like. I mean, it's like boxing. You don't go to boxing to see people talk to each other. You go to a boxing match because you want people to punch each other in the face, and it's the same a bit with debates. If you go to a Christopher Hitchens versus pick religious person he was debating with, if you go to that kind of debate, you want them to punch each other. You know. In a sense.
Yeah, I guess I mean it'd be more like so like if you like boxing generically, then like you may go to watch just people box. So like I'm like that with say baseball in the United States. I don't have a particular team that I care to win, but I still like baseball. So I'll watch a game just to watch good baseball. Whereas most people are like diehard fans of a particular team and they take sides and it's just like this whole huge like standoffish thing and it's like it's weird to me from this perspective but like most people do that and I think it's the same thing with like people that love to do the debates and it's like I help run an honor society and part of the one of the things I do on the executive board is uh, set up events including things like guest speakers and colloquiums and paper presentations, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Within the last year or so, I convinced the rest of the committee, like, we need to stop this debates thing. People are not gaining from this. They're going to show up. They already have their mind made up. And then it's just going to be like, who can punch better? And like, that's not the point of it. Like, the entire point of us holding this event is for people to gain something out of it, not to just go cheerlead the person they like, you know? Let's go Cardinals in the chat.
What does it mean?
Cardinals is a Cincinnati baseball team.
Oh, I see.
But yeah, I mean that's an example of language too. Like if you're influenced, some people are influenced by their hometown.
Which I find so weird though, because like most of the players, especially in like more let's say more like professional teams and stuff, they don't even come from that place. It's not like that's the city's players. It's more like the team that happens to train in that city. Half of them are not even from
St. Louis Cardinals. I'm sorry, Cincinnati Reds. I'm getting yelled at. I understand it, but it's funny. I wouldn't understand it, I don't think, without my sociological background. So it's especially if you're in like a lower socioeconomic status, like that's one thing you have, like you have this strong sense of family and community and hometown pride, and like that's a huge like meaningful thing in your life.
Uh-huh.
So like they're representing your community, the team.
Uh-huh.
And so that's why you like stick to them and cheer them on. And it doesn't even really matter so much who the people are as it's about you're representing us when we otherwise normally wouldn't have been heard.
That's a very interesting way of thinking. Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because, like, when we're talking about representation, the president is the representative of the country.
Sort of, yeah.
So if let's say he represents, quote unquote, us, the people of that particular country, do people get this kind of feeling for that person too?
Do you mean the citizens?
Yeah.
I think most citizens view it that way. I mean, me personally, just because I'm more into government stuff, I think of the Secretary of State as representing the United States more, but the
How come?
average person in the United States definitely thinks of the president as representative.
Why is the Secretary of State more
Because they're basically
representative?
they're the top diplomat in the country. That's the reason I think that they're the ones that the person that is always like doing tours and visits to other countries for diplomacy and things like that. But by a long shot to the general population, the commander in chief is representative of the country on the national stage.
So is that partially why there is so much of an emotional reaction, either positive or negative, towards having a person elected that you agree or disagree with?
I would say so. I mean, because yeah, you have your ideological differences, and that's a huge part of it too. But people that I know, for example, that do not like Trump are just utterly embarrassed that he's their representative on the global stage. Whereas people that are pro-Trump are very proud of that.
Hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, it's both, but um, to me, it's more complex than that. But I understand that that's not the average person.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm reading
we
the
kind
chat,
of yeah, me too. We kind of got a bit off topic, slightly, tiny bit. But I kind of
Yeah.
think it might.
Oh, you know what?
Yeah.
I did want to say this before I forget because we were talking about sports teams, and even there, you can see the influence of language. So when you say, let's say you're talking about the team that you particularly root for,
Mm-hmm.
like St. Louis, you'll say, we won or we lost.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean we? You're on the team? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's that strong of an identity thing
I see.
that's been established with you and that team.
Yeah, and also partially
All
depending on
through
what newspaper,
language.
local newspaper you read, you hear like, Team X lost against Team Y, and the team that's first, yeah, we won or we lost. That's always, the first team is always the team that they're actually like talking about. The other team is kind of like the object, the facilitator of team talking about. So if, for example, you have
that too.
City Edmonton playing hockey against City Calgary, like the teams, I don't know which one's there, by the way, very, very bad. Anyway, so you see those both fighting against each other with hockey. And like Edmonton wins, in the Edmonton version of the newspaper, you will see, yeah, our team won, awesome, against us. And in the other one, it's like, nah, yeah, we had a defeat against, Edmonton, whatever, kind of like that. So it's just that already is different, where they can't just copy and paste that kind of stuff even.
Yeah, it's even from their perspective. It's not they won, it's we lost.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think that was the first place where it actually dawned on me how important it is how you phrase things in a newspaper. When I was having two newspapers and one said we won and the other one said we lost. Where exactly the same thing happened.
The interesting thing too is
yeah.
It's people will perpetuate it for you. You know what I mean? Like talking to themselves about the game.
Yeah.
They will reinforce that sort of mentality just through their language.
Yeah, it points out something very interesting. He also says, he hears things like, we saved France in World War II.
I just saw that, yeah.
Yeah, that's also like, we are fighting against X and we are fighting against Y.
I'm pretty sure the French saved us, actually.
Don't
By
tell
us, I mean the United States.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't like French.
You
It's
know
a
the
weird
whole
language.
Statue of Liberty thing.
Okay, so is there anything else that you would like to talk about concerning this topic?
Um, it's not necessarily language based, but it is influence based. Chat here says, "Is it truly hard to understand identifying with a group?" And no, I mean, other than the reasons I've already stated, um, this also comes from a just sort of survival instinct of tribalism, which always isn't always a negative thing.
Mm.
Like, people need other people to survive. You cannot survive on your own. It's not possible. You would not be here, your relatives would be long dead, etc.
Yeah.
So that's a main reason that people group up with other people that have similar interests, is because it's a survival tactic, whether they realize it or not. So I thought that was interesting that that was brought up. Didn't want to let that go
Yeah,
by.
and you also mentioned the people who are more influenced by this kind of group thinking are usually like lower financial classes, right?
I didn't really. I don't think I directly said that.
Okay.
I I do think that they're likely to find active because if you're of a lower socioeconomic status, you rely heavily on community for survival. And so if you're used to that compared to, say, someone that's like, making seven figures that doesn't really need anyone directly, like, have that same mentality. Now, whether or not that leads all the way to being susceptible to something like that, I'm not sure. It seems like that could be the case, but I really don't. I don't want to make a definitive statement on that, but I could
Yeah.
see how.
No, the reason I'm asking is, would it be fair to say that people who tend to be in the higher, economic statuses tend to have, this kind of less. You see those people less in the game field and going for a person. They tend to be more distanced to this.
Yeah, it's for the same reason I mentioned before, where they have higher suicide rates than lower socioeconomic status people.
Mm-hmm.
They feel more alone or independent. I mean, that's kind of all the same thing. Whereas if you're, a lower socioeconomic status and you heavily depend on your community, not just for identity and meaning in life, but survival. But that's why you see like a higher rate of suicide in rich white men that is way higher, like astronomically higher than I can never remember if it's Black or Hispanic women are the lowest, like not even close. And that's because of the large disparity in wealth distribution in the United States.
So basically,
but
what you
that's
say is the richer you are, the more likely you are to kill yourself?
Yes, rich white men, upper class white men, have by far the highest suicide rate, and that's because they're socially isolated. If they don't depend on anyone really directly, they don't see anyone. You know what I mean? It's not like you're interacting with people directly. You depend on.
Mm-hmm.
It's through intermediaries. If you spend time with other people socially, it's people like yourself who also don't need you in any way.
Mm-hmm.
So your social bonds are very weak. They don't have a lot of meaning to them. You don't really have a sense of community. It's just kind of like me, my stuff, and that's how I am. It's just to myself.
Mm-hmm. So how
And
would you, for example,
that's a huge effect on your psychology.
how would you counteract this?
Have them go live in the hood. I'm serious. Go live there for like 2 months.
Yeah.
And
stay alive, preferably.
that's something experiential that you can't just could like instruct somebody on. But it works the other way too. So like if you like you know how a lot of times you'll see people that were say very poor and then they win the lottery and then like years later they're broke.
Yeah.
It's not just because they don't know how to handle money. It's they have you have to keep in mind where they're coming from as far as a community standpoint goes. So they get alienated from the people that they had very strong social ties with usually
Mm-hmm.
because they now have all this money. They're not dependent on them anymore, so they weaken. A lot of times they're viewed as sort of others now that they've quote unquote made it. You know, they tend to move out of the neighborhood that they grew up in and have all the very strong social capital in. And then they have nothing else but to just buy stuff.
Why
Like that's the only thing
exactly?
that gives them meaning, and so they just keep doing it.
Why exactly is it wealthy white men and not just wealthy white people, or wealthy people in general?
Because that's the demographic.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's way more than say wealthy white women or wealthy people in the United States.
But like if you say, because now the next thing that pops into my mind is it's a very basically a subcategory of people, you know, not just the wealthy but a particular subcategory of the wealthy.
Right.
So there must be other things involved, because otherwise it would just
Yes.
hit everyone who's rich.
Right. So the way it breaks down is it stays that way within socioeconomic status. So the males lower socioeconomic status, let's say of black people, are more likely to commit suicide than the females. Just like the males in the upper white are more likely to commit suicide than the females. Or
Okay.
middle class. And it works that way every time. Like every demographic breakdown, socioeconomic and race, if you divide it across those sort of social graphs, every time.
What about
It's
poor? What
the-
about poor people, like poor white men? They must be
Yes,
much less likely to kill themselves, though.
They're less likely to kill themselves than white men that have more money.
Yeah.
But if you stay within poor people, they're most likely to kill themselves compared to say poor white women,
Mm-hmm.
and definitely more likely to kill themselves than say poor black women.
Oh yeah.
So if you create a
how
social
about
graph
poor
that
black
breaks down
men?
those demographics,
So it's
always like that.
basically more like the white people kill each other or themselves more than each other. Kill themselves more than other people.
Yes, white women say, for example, kill themselves more than black women.
Where
So,
does that
like,
come from then?
especially in the same socioeconomic status, but if they're in a higher one especially. So no matter how you slice it, it's not just on a full spectrum. It's like the thing that is the highest is men, and then the higher economic status is you're more likely. White male being a dominant cultural image in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
they're highest on the list because they're most likely to exist. But let's say you ignore completely upper class and you just look at the middle class. White male has a statistically significant more in suicide than a middle class woman. Just like a white woman. Just like a middle class white woman rate of suicide than a black man that's poor. So it
Can
breaks
you
down
repeat
that
that?
way in, like,
So
every
the white
category.
woman is more likely to kill herself than the black guy. Is that correct?
If she yeah, if she's middle class and the black guy's low class, lower class.
No, but like let's stay in the same class because this my disconnect is with the classes here. Let's stay in a completely same
Okay.
class. We stay in I
If
don't
you're
know
in the
middle
same
class.
class, it's
We
men.
stay in a middle class. Would the black guy be more likely to kill himself, or would the white woman be more likely to kill herself?
That's close. I'd have to look, but I would imagine it's the white woman. But the way it breaks down almost every time, and the margins differ.
Mm-hmm.
When you add all the factors in, race, socioeconomic status, and sex or gender, the
Yeah, no, because
biggest gap, the most
my
variables are women.
problem with what you're saying, you know, and that's why I have such issues with it, is, you know, you're focusing very much on the skin color. And skin color,
Well, yeah,
to me, is not necessarily, like, skin color is just part of the whole, you know? It's not about what
sure.
you look like. It's more about how you're raised and in what kind of culture and in what kind of environment. Because you take a black guy
Well,
and
yeah,
you put him into a high white society, he will be just as likely to kill himself as every other white guy, merely because of the fact that he was raised that way. Very likely. And
right. But the reason
yeah,
those examples exist, they're statistical outliers. So it's not that it's because they're black. It's because it's not that let's say being black makes you more likely less likely to commit suicide. I'm saying the reason it's laid out that way in the United States is because if you're black, the chances of you being way more likely than if you're white. Like, let's say I didn't know the person and someone just said, take a guess. Overwhelmingly, it's black people. It's not because they're black. It just happens to be that way.
it says women attempt suicide more, but men commit more. Women typically go for less direct reasons to leave a hair. Is that correct? It's
Or is this it? I thought I saw something about that. Women try more often and fail more often? I don't know. I'm talking about completed suicide, so I don't know about the attempts.
That would be interesting
But
to see as well.
yeah, but that's what I wanted to break down is like, no matter how you slice that,
Mm-hmm.
those are huge factors. But the reason that they matter, like the reason it's important to include race and socioeconomic status is because they're in the United States, those are closely tied. They have a lot of overlap.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with incarceration levels with men and versus women, that's another good reason to incorporate it.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason I bring that up is because that disparity largely is when it ultimately comes down to is social capital and a strong sense of community or a weak sense of community.
Yeah.
So it's not that something about being white gives you a weak sense of community. It's just the vast majority of people in the United States that are white have a weaker sense of community.
H, do you want to jump on the stream? Are you fine with him?
I'm kind of disturbed by how much just the specific that H
No, you know,
about
like
suicide.
yeah, but like the I think H knows a lot about this. No, the reason I was, you know, poking you a bit about the statistics is because when you started off with the statistics, you know, like obviously it may be partially because of how I'm conditioned by it, but I react very allergically to skin color for some reason. It's like, can we come to a point where skin color just doesn't matter? Obviously, there is a huge overlap of, you know, what is your, you know, social status, what is your economic status, what is your skin color in the US. But for someone, for example, who grew up in Europe, this just doesn't compute quite that well.
Yeah, and I know there's
and like, you know, if you're not careful the way you phrase it, you will have a lot of people who will tell you, you know, why is it a poor black guy? There are poor white people too. And obviously, you know, the point itself is good, where it's like, yeah, well, there are rich and poor people. But the thing is, you have this whole background of why, for example, a poor black guy is less likely to kill himself than a poor white guy. But unless you stay on the same economic level, because when you go, the rich white guy is more likely to kill himself than a poor black guy. Yeah, obviously they have very different situations and very different statuses. But unless you put it on the same level, I think for many people it's hard to understand that there is still a disconnect.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things like that. So like, it's this is one thing. So like, I avoid talking about social justice warriors because I think it's a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that really that actually genuinely bothers me about that sort of movement is that they've ruined a lot of key vocabulary and concepts of very valid points and concepts that people now shy away from, which is unfortunate. I mean, I would think people would have the sort of mental fortitude to stick around through it. But like right now, I'll give you a perfect example. If I start talking about social constructions, people start freaking out because they'll go, "Oh my God, social constructs!" Like just sort of mentally tune out, and it's like, but yeah, there are legitimate ones. It's just not insane postmodernist stuff. There's a difference. But like, we can't have that conversation because people have such a knee-jerk reaction to just even phrases that they will just mentally block themselves from learning. Pull up, I don't know, I think I have it on this directory here. For suicide breakdown by demographic. But that's an example that's why I was really trying to drive home that there's nothing inherent about being white or being black or being Hispanic that makes you commit suicide at a different rate. It's that being one of those races overwhelmingly categorizes you socioeconomically. And it matters because let's say you're a upper class black man. It's actually going to be worse for you than an upper class white man because there's so few people like you. Your social support system's going to suck even more. You're going to have a hard time relating to people. You're going to be rejected by other people. I mean, like so I'm white. I've lived in a overwhelmingly black community.
Mm-hmm.
And the socioeconomic status of that area was pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to prove yourself if you're a white guy. No one's going to talk to you or be your friend or give you a job or give you a ride unless you really got to prove yourself that you're like someone that's going to like represent the community, like no matter where you go, if you don't do that. So it's like a different version of you're a upper class black male. If you don't sort of quote unquote act white, at least in some ways, necessarily going to shun you, but they're not going to interact with you the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work that way. I mean, it's as simple as, it's not even that, it's how you dress. So I mentioned this before in private to someone. There are still neighborhoods like that I do for social research. And I notice a huge difference in attitude amongst people that are essentially my friends if I dress down. Like they treat me in a more comfortable way. I'm more accepted. People are more at ease. They interact with me more. Like it's noticeable. If I show up dressed like I do for like work, like nobody wants to talk to me. It's really uncomfortable. And that's my clothes. That's not my skin color.
Yeah.
So it's weird, but that's just how people behave.
Yeah, but like, wouldn't you say that applies on every spectrum? Like when you say you would have a tough time living in a hood, same way, okay, a rich black person would have a bit of an issue, but the moment he dresses up in suits and goes around, I don't know, drives around in a fancy car or stuff like that, people would pretty much get along with him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So like, I have a friend That's a professor who's from Nigeria. And for all intents and purposes in the United States, people think he's black. They don't think he's African or Nigerian. But we've talked about this. He dresses to the nines every day. I do not see him in anything. He wears a full-on suit. I mean, you will never see him in street clothes. He's always driving a Benz or something like that. He's always wearing a crazy amount of jewelry.
Link? Sorry,
that's why he does that.
Yeah, makes sense. Do you have a link for because there are people in the chat asking for the statistics, like the suicide statistics?
Yeah, I'm looking through my presentation slides here because I really want to find it because that would be the easiest for me to pull it up, but I'm having trouble. There's a ton of files in this folder. PowerPoint. Let's see. I might have to send it to you so we can put it in the description later. I'm not going to find it. There's a huge amount of files in this folder for this class that it's going to be in.
Now, I would like
you can find it on the Census Bureau.
Yeah.
The U.S. Census Bureau will have it. Their website.
Now I would like to include that later in the description. That wouldn't be bad.
Yeah, sure.
Do you mind if a couple of people join in?
That.
We shouldn't keep
go ahead.
Too long.
Actually, if you could give me just a few minutes break, and then I'll come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk to people. Sure.
It's good.
Okay, I'll be back.
Okay, Blue. You have me on Twitter, Blue, right? It's so silent. The moment Shifty goes, it's so silent suddenly. Okay, who else wants to join in to hang out? Let me see. Blue, send me a PM. Send me a PM on Twitter if you want to join. Whoever wants to join. That would be the easiest. Hoping I can find you guys. Blue sent me a PM because I can't find you. I cannot. Too many people. Too many people testing me. Too many people PMing me here. Okay. Let's see. So maybe I should answer a couple of questions here. Toilet break. Yeah, let's have a toilet break. Have you heard the song Putting On? No, I did not hear that song, Michael. Let's see. How do you dress for work? Well, I dress for work with a creepy mask, yeah. Or I don't wear anything. Well, I do wear, but I don't wear anything special. Okay, Blue, you seriously have to send me a tweet because I will not be able to add you otherwise. Anyone else wants to join? No, this is the first time I tried this word. What is it called? This word OBS stuff, and I'm just very, very bad at it. Where do I get my news? From Canada I get my news. Which is bad, because Canada is very interesting, let's say. Do you have newspaper guys? Do you have in the US, the people from the US, do you have newspapers that are in different languages? Are the newspapers that are in different languages, are those just imported from other countries, or are they actually US newspapers with different languages? break. Is there any way you can actually have a break on this thing? By the way, do you like this kind of format more? What would you like more? What would you like less? Because we're going over like 2 hours right now. So it's probably a bit long. Maybe I should keep it shorter. Also, what are the topics that you guys would like? I think we're like completely in delay, by the way.
Hello, I am back.
Hello, welcome back. It's so silent without you.
Do I talk too much? Do I ramble?
No, it's just so silent. Okay. Blue, unless you sent me a private message, I'm not able to make you join. Sorry. I have too many people sending me private messages in Twitter. I can't find him. And also Twitter doesn't really want to cooperate. We have this issue. Like, this computer we basically made work about half an hour before we actually, maybe 3/4 of an hour before we started the stream. Because like everything here is new. Because our old computer just gave up on us the 23rd. And we still had stuff to do. Like the video that I'm basically trying to finish this month. I had to put it out last month. But the 23rd, suddenly just the motherboard died. And so we were on basically, you know, Christmas vacation, no post, gets there on time kind of thing. And we just couldn't get anything done anymore. And so now finally the last pieces arrived to get the new computer together-ish. And so we basically just picked the last piece up. I think it was Friday. And since then, or even Thursday. And since then, we're just busy trying to get everything set up and make it work. And the make it work part is very not efficient, let's say. Especially because Windows is picky and finicky. And so it's like, you have the same hard drive, you have everything the same, except like, yeah, you have a new motherboard and stuff. And so Windows tells you, hey, you're cloning me on a different computer. You're using 2 computers. Oh. It's not going to work for you anymore. And then you go and try to find your old sticker on the old computer that doesn't work anymore because the motherboard broke, because, you know, sometimes computers break. And you look for that, and then you have the numbers that are missing because they're scratched off. Because, you know, kids and dogs and cats and animals and everything just play around sometimes a bit too much on the computer. And so you're like, okay, now I'm stuck. Am I starting to like guess the letter that's missing? Am I starting to... But then we're lucky because we made a copy of it and saved it somewhere that's not on the computer because we can't access it properly. Lovely. So we had an adventure there. Very fun adventure. Yeah. Yeah. No, seriously, if our, you know, video editing software would work on Linux, I would jump over instantly. Because, you know, those people still have bugs and everything. But stuff just actually gets fixed. And when it gets fixed, it tends to be slightly better than before and not worse. Which is always like when you have a Windows update, you know, you're always there, okay, 50-50 Joker. Is it going to be better? Is it going to be worse? Like winning in the lotto.
It's the same thing. Whenever I get like a major operating system or mobile operating system, whatever, update of some kind, I immediately just completely reset the hardware device and the entire operating. Like I just format it and start over, and it always works better. Oh God, no! Don't use Linux over Windows. That's a nightmare. Sincerely, someone that's done IT for 2 decades.
You say Linux is not that good?
It's better if you really know what you're doing and you have a ton of time to spend on it and you don't depend on it heavily for anything. It's a million years use Linux for a daily driver machine. And I don't mean like a modified version like Android or even Mac OS uses BSD Unix.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, not in a million years.
Yeah, no, like
that's a nightmare.
I have to say, I'm losing what is it? I'm losing like because I have this super old laptop, this super old gray brick, and nothing works on it. You know, we had Windows XP on it, and so they have like this what is it, Ubuntu Lite, Lubuntu or something.
Oh yeah, Ubuntu, yeah.
That one is actually genuinely good. I never had crashes, and that thing is genuinely old. So you know, I would have expected Firefox to abandon me a couple of times, but no, that thing just keeps on going. And I have to say, with Windows, that was just not possible anymore. Even with Windows XP, even though Windows XP was actually not too bad.
Yeah, that's the main advantage to Linux is it runs on older hardware because it's not resource intensive.
Yeah.
The two main reasons that I wouldn't ever use it as a daily driver is one is its hardware support has always been terrible, and then the other reason is it's rare, like based on your needs, I guess, but it's rare that commercial software that is common is made for it.
Yeah, that's the one thing that really annoys me. Because, like, imagine you have to work on a video editing software or anything, and it just doesn't work. Like, if they would fix that...
It doesn't exist, yeah.
If they would fix that, I would instantly... Because I'm so sick of Windows. It's not like you're just a user. Because, there was a time where you actually were an admin of your own computer, and then there was a time where you were just a user. Nowadays, you're a bloody toddler, Yeah, don't look for the system. Don't look for the settings. You have a nice big circle there. Just click on it. We will deal with it. We will fuck it up. We will not be able to do it, but we will deal with it because you can't do it because you're stupid. And I'm thinking about myself.
Yeah.
Seriously? Where are the old times where I actually owned my computer?
My complaint with that is that it's easy to use because that's cool. You want that. The problem I have with that is it doesn't force you as the user to learn how to use your machine. So then you get all these people that just want things to work. And then they bitch when you have to do things for security reasons or things like that. And it's like, I don't care. I just want it to be easy and to work. And it's like, too bad. And you got to deal with that. You got to fight that all the time. But I don't know. Being in the tech industry so long, I gotta say Microsoft's really gotten their act together recently. It's bizarro world where not only has Windows really cleaned up its act compared to before, but Microsoft and Google are making decent hardware, and Apple has stopped largely innovating and they're focusing more on software. And it's like, what the hell is going on? It's like opposite world.
Yeah.
But you can actually, Windows 10 speaks Ubuntu now. Like you can run Ubuntu. PowerShell has a lot of similar functions as Linux. I mean, there's really no point, I don't think. And then if you run OS 10 like on a Mac, if you really want to get under the hood and use Unix commands because it's built on Unix, you can do that. So like to me, that's the good balance. It's like you can still get a little under the hood and get heavier stuff if you want to, but it's not unbelievably obnoxious to use just to do simple things.
I think we have just started a computer civil war inside
Big
the
Girl
chat.
Petty.
Sorry?
You'd be surprised at how many people in the hacker community computers. And it's because of what I just said, where you can get into the Unix core and mess with it if you really know what you're doing and you want to. But it's super easy to use for day-to-day stuff. It doesn't drive you insane trying to get, I don't know, your video card working or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh God, Visual Basic. Shoot me in the face.
Gosh. Say, is there something that you weren't like dealing with? Because like you were busy with tech, you're busy with sociology.
What was the question?
Tell us a bit about your history there, because I'm curious now.
No.
You break off. Ish.
You are cutting out.
Me too? Lovely. Okay, no, I was curious. Because, you talk about technology a lot. And I don't know your background in technology that much. I know what you're doing right now, but I don't know what... how exactly do you work? Like, what did you do? What are you doing now? Maybe just as a background. Is that okay?
Sure. Well, I mean, I've been into hardware since I was about 10, like putting things together for consumption for free, just because I liked it. I went into a programming job at around age 19 for a little bit. Did that for a little while. We did some things, contractual work for like hospitals and stuff. I hated it. I can't stand programming beyond like shell scripting. Almost all of my experience is in networking, hardware, and operating systems. So mostly um, like like information security stuff. That's most of what I'm into. So I have had a few stints of it as a career, but I started out doing it as something I loved, just like a personal interest. And I got burned out real fast on it when it started to become more of a job or a career. And I didn't want it to get ruined by that. So I took a break from the entire scene completely. And then in between that, and then when I sort of got back into it, which was more recently, is when I got my philosophy and sociology education. So I do freelance stuff now for tech.
Interesting.
But my actual like academic stuff is the philosophy and sociology.
Yeah. How did you end up with that? Because that's a bit of a, I don't know. It's kind of a bit very different, one from another.
That's what I thought at first, and then I realized what it was. It was funny because it was before I got into philosophy. So in high school, junior and senior of high school, I was in this vocational program for computer electronics and networking. So, Monday through Friday, 4 or so hours every day, we were basically tech support, free tech support.
Okay.
For the entire school district. And the last day of class is coming around, like senior year. We're like all ready to graduate. This is at the end of the day too, so we're all just kind of like, let's go mode. And it was really weird. All of us just kind of looked around at each other, like we're all talking, and it wasn't like we weren't learning anything, obviously. And then we all just kind of got quiet, and we all looked at each other. And I just realized, after all this time, I fucking hate computers. And we all started laughing because it's so true. We don't like computers. We like the sort of logic of figuring out what's wrong with it or how to make it work the way we want to do. We don't like computers themselves. And that's what I like about philosophy. It's like the same thing. It's like it's a puzzle to be solved. It's this mental challenge. So that's how I got into that. And then what led to sociology was actually some side work through ethics and philosophy. Yep. Little grab bag.
So I would say I don't really have much more to add. Is there anything anyone else wants to add? Like because I told Blue he has to pair me because otherwise I can't make him join. Because I'm just genuinely, I'm completely overwhelmed with my 5 screens here. 5 screens in one. You have to think.
Oh wow.
Like I have the chat open, and then I have the YouTube thingy to see that we're still online and streaming, and then I have this weird OBS open, which obviously Logic had to set up because it looked Chinese already when I opened it. That's how much tech I know. No, thing is, I was actually not too bad with tech. I mean, I went to university and everything, but eventually I just really got put off, and I just stopped. And partially it was because I had to work and study at the same time, and that just kills it. Because, then you stress and you force yourself, but also computers. It's computers. It's like, they're not like quite on the machine level where things when you put in a screw, the screw actually fits. They're not quite on that practical level where you know that the screw sits and therefore it works. But they're also not on the you say something and it will be done kind of thing, where it's like you constantly have bugs to fix. You have to be very precise in order to not have any bugs when you make a code. Sometimes, even if there is no real bug or no real mistake of yours, in a sense, it will still not quite work for some obscure reason that you can't quite figure out that point. And then eventually, 5 months later, you're like, holy smokes, that was the problem. And then sometimes it's so messy. And it got so frustrating that I just had to stop.
Yeah, there's all kinds of ways you can get frustrated with it.
And also, the moment people know that you're into tech stuff, everyone asks you to fix their shit.
Yep, that's one of the main reasons I quit.
Ugh.
Is you start feeling used by people.
And it's like, when they call you over and they say they have a major problem and they really need their computer, and you go over and they vacuumed and unplugged that stupid thing and you told them to plug it back in and they wouldn't listen to you because, I never really unplugged it, and then you come over and the bloody plug is loose, it really gets to you.
Yeah, it's... I'm trying to remember who I told this to. I think it might have been Carrie, but... So that's really common too, for once you get known, I don't know if you experience this, but once people know that you can fix things or that you're good at it or whatever, you start to feel used. People will only be your friend because of that or that sort of thing, and it's just like you feel dirty. It's just like, ugh, I can't do this. This is just ethically, it's just frustrating. I don't know. So yeah, that was part of the reason I got burned out on it. Between that and what I was saying about it potentially being something fun ruined by being a career, those two things, I'm like, I need a break.
Yeah.
Or this is gonna get ruined. I won't enjoy this ever again.
So let me make advertisement. Next time will be in 2 weeks. You're still up for it?
Yeah.
And we will have logic
yes,
done.
I am. Correct.
Yeah. So
I have it on
everyone,
my calendar.
put it on your calendar. Next week, Sunday, the what? The 21st?
Yes.
Usual time. And we
Sounds
will
good
be
to me.
talking about what?
Rights of artificial intelligence, I think it was?
Yes.
Sentience? Let me make sure I'm wording it properly.
Also well, logic will be all over the place as usual. It will be fun.
The way you worded it was, I think it was AI rights. I think is what you said.
Well, yeah. Well,
Something like
it's
that.
not really. Yeah, it's more like sentient computing. What it is, like sentient machines. How you define sentience?
Yeah, I like that better anyway.
No, because the thing is, like with AI, not every AI is sentient.
Right.
And
exactly.
I should have
it's too narrow.
I should have pointed that out in the last, because I tend to say AI a lot when actually I mean sentient, software in a sense, or sentient program, sentient computing thingy. And because I tend to say AI, that gets some people obviously upset with me because I should be a bit more precise. Yeah.
Oh, hey, I'm gonna try and find those stats so you can put it in the description. If I don't send it to you and it's been a minute, you or anyone doesn't matter, DM me and remind me, because this time of year I got a lot of stuff going on, so I'm gonna try really hard to do it on my own and just remember, but I screw up sometimes.
Yeah. So you heard him all. You can poke him and
that.
pester him. The link for his Twitter is in the description. Thing is, you cannot count on me remembering in this period, because I'm myself not quite the most. I mean, I partially even forgot we had the hangout. I had logic reminding me. Just saying.
I was gonna DM you, like later yesterday or whatever. Like, are we still on? But
Wait.
usually we almost always are. We just DM each other like hours beforehand and be like, "You ready?"
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it was good that I remembered yesterday, or rather that Logic reminded me yesterday, because we took so long to set this stupid thing up. Because,
Yeah,
everything is ready. You think the updates are done because the computer told you the updates are done. You log in, downloads other updates. It's like, you did that stuff yesterday, you stupid bloody piece of... Ah! Yeah. Everyone who is in tech, everyone who is in fixing whatever kind of tech device knows how we feel, I'm afraid. Yeah.
I may have found.
Okay.
Favorites.
Sinus Woods says, I'd say no AI is sentient. I don't think we are even able of making sentient programs at all, even remotely. But AI, you can have AI turn sentient if you do it properly, or at least theoretically you could. But we will talk about this next week. So no, in 2 weeks. So it will be fun. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think we had a pretty good discussion.
Yeah.
That was interesting. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I kind of like the background now, where you just see the two pictures. Cause like, remember that the last time I got kind of surprised where someone just suddenly donated and stuff.
Yeah.
And then like I had to go back in the chat and write down the names and then thank them later, and then partially they were already gone or something like that. And I felt super shitty about this. So this time I set it up that if anyone comes up with a stupid idea to donate or something, then they will have a zombie pop up, and zombie following them and attacking them. So there you go. Cause bah. No, seriously. That was so embarrassing. Cause I was there like, oh no, shit. I just got a pledge, and then later I got another one. And I was like, okay, I have no idea how to deal with this. And the thing is, I didn't even turn this on purpose. I mean, I did turn it on because I was curious and I tried to test it, and I wanted to turn it off, but I didn't find a way to turn it off again. And it's also stupid because why on earth would you donate through YouTube? Because those guys keep, 30%? It's like, don't feed YouTube. Don't feed the trolls. Which in this case is YouTube. Yeah. No, but it was nice. It was nice. It was really nice though.
Sorry, I think I may have found...
You found the thingy?
The stats, yeah. Sorry, my
Lovely.
brain's like halfway in the feed.
Can you send me the link?
Statistics is where you're going to pull this from. Let me make sure this is the right one. The CDC gathers it, but let me make sure this is normalized from age, ethnicity, age. I want to make sure they're pulling this from the source that I'm looking up with the CDC. Yeah, it is. Okay. I'm hoping to find the actual CDC page, though. That would be better. Oh wait, this might be. That's race and ethnicity.
Should I keep the people busy?
Yeah,
A joke.
I'm just trying to make sure that this is legitimate, like from the CEC, because it's a little bit.
Hey, it's even fact checking for you guys. Yay! Yeah, no. In 2 weeks that will be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. Is there anything like maybe we should just let the chat ask us stuff or something? Like, guys, have you any questions? I don't know, or any topics that you would like to have in future? I don't know. Psychological influence of media consumption. Yeah.
Okay, so this looks to be it.
Okay.
There's one thing I wanted to comment on. Where'd it go?
Okay, and one other thing, someone before said that the audio is off from the panel. We seem kind of on the same level of volume, but
okay.
But could it be that you are sometimes more far away from the microphone?
Possibly. It's like an earbud type setup, so I just hold it. So I could just not be paying attention and like have it away from my mouth more. I'm trying not to get too close to it so it doesn't do the popping thing like we talked about before. Drive people nuts. Oh, okay, so this is it. But what I did want to point out is when you look in figure 3 where it says suicide rates by race and ethnicity in the United States from 2014.
Yeah.
There is one column for American Indian or Alaska Native to where the males are approximately the same as white males, but that's due to an external factor of primarily alcoholism. But the women are higher too. So like they're different than, they're kind of it's weird to place them in the same category because the people that identify that way in this survey tend to be like more like direct lineage that would like say live on a reservation and that sort of thing. So they're kind of not in the same environment that the rest of these people are. But I just wanted to make people aware of that if they, you know, see this and are confused as to why it's kind of like an odd one out. But I will DM you the link here.
Okay.
There you go.
Open this. And I'll just add this to the, because it's, you know, it's good to, because we're talking about certain statistics and it's good to have them. In the
yeah, you don't want to just.
You don't want to say
it's nice to
the world is flat and then find out that it's not. And
mic drop. Right. I mean, even if you're right, it's always cool to give people easy resources.
How should I? What should I title this?
Suicide statistics by demographic, maybe? I don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay. A link should be posted. Oh gosh, I just missed. I'll fix this later. I'm not gonna. No more technical nonsense.
Looks fine to me.
I wrote suicide, and then like the UI side part just deleted itself out because
it just
I was
changed.
misclicking.
S.E stat.
Yeah. I'm fixing this later because.
That's funny how it like I don't have to refresh the page. It just.
That's interesting.
Live
I didn't notice
changes.
that. No, mine Mine seems to stay the same, but maybe it's just because it's on the developer page. Okay.
I think it's when it goes to rebuffer.
Yeah. Okay, guys, if you have nothing else to add, we are totally gonna call it a day.
Yeah.
I think I think that's just the suicide thingy, right? This is just the completed suicides, right?
They're defining it as where'd it go? I was actually going to read that because I remember it was being asked. Where'd it go? Hold on a second. So for the purposes of this, they categorize as suicide, suicide attempt, and suicidal ideation.
Mm-hmm.
And then the statistics themselves, which are maintained by the CDC, is completion, so deaths. People that were good at it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. What is that? Woman worsting? This makes no sense. Okay, let's call it a day for today. And then we'll see each other in 2 weeks. Now, big question, how do I stop the stream?
I believe you just hang up in the...
No, because if I hang up, it's still streaming. Because this is not like this is all. Okay, let me. Okay, I push a button.
Studio, you should be able to. I think if you go into your creator studio, like the same way you set it up to start, you should be able to stop in there.
Okay, well I didn't start it. Logic did. Okay. AIDS. I would really like your statistics as well, because he just mentioned that he would like this. He has other statistics that he was talking about in the chat, and yeah, if you have those, just send them. I will add them to the description below, and then everyone can check them out. Cause like that's the easiest. And guys, please do click on the links and check them out, cause chances are we mess up something, and you cannot take what people say for granted. Let's just take that away from it, okay? Cause nobody's perfect. And there are links, and links really like you, especially the ones that want you to click on them. And so there. Yeah. Push the button. Yeah. Okay. Thanks everyone for listening.
Yeah, thanks for joining. That was great.
It was fun. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
I think we're still online.